Let's bring in our psychotherapist, Fran Sherman. Fran, as we walk through these emotions, and we've laid them out at least early on, the initial verdict comes down, it's shock, which turns to anger. And where do people go next? Obviously, we want to point that energy in a positive direction, but what can we expect as we watch people's emotions play out through all this?
You know, I think what the other psychotherapist said is actually the perfect advice. Holding on to the anger is doing nobody any good. What we can do is work on maybe changing some laws. There are some laws in Florida that are worked on being changed right now. Work on telling your own kids how much you love them, rallying around kids in the community, and making sure as best as you can that other children that may be being abused, that you can maybe reach out to help the parents, to alert the authorities. So I think we need to take that anger and really focus it not on being angry, but on honoring Caylee's memory by focusing on doing positive for her memory.
Hey, Fran, do you think people will get stirred up again as Casey Anthony exits his jail behind us?
Yes, I do. And I think, as you were speaking earlier, her kind of slipping out in the night without other people knowing, which is a possibility, would be the best thing, because certainly her life has been threatened, and that wouldn't serve any purpose. So, yes, I think that people are angry and outraged. And I think as a mother, you know, when we think about our child missing for 10 seconds, we sort of like freak out. So I think most people can't wrap their minds around somebody not knowing where their child was, or maybe she did, for 31 days. And that's a piece that most people can't focus on. But I want to say that Casey is not like most healthy people who would respond in a very, very different way than she did. So yes, in short, I do think that people will respond again, and very, very angry. And my only hope is...
It's one of the reasons why people are proposing Caylee's law, a law that says, that would say, if it was passed, that it's a crime not to report your child missing right away.
It always should be a law. We'll be back with more from Orlando. Stay with us. Well, let's bring in our psychotherapist, Fran Sherman. Fran, when you see George Anthony, do you believe him? Are you reading some cues? What are you reading here?
You know, I think what Jane said before was that we watched him through the past 3 years being a sympathetic figure, but I do feel that when he was on the stand, and I have spoken to lots of people, that he presented as really angry, really defiant, and then there was also lots of doubt put up there that he possibly abused Casey, which is what her defense team said, and that he possibly had an affair. So I think people really questioned his credibility. I think he did present, as far as I could see, certainly sometimes as a grieving grandfather and sometimes as a very, very angry man. So I can certainly see how the jury found him to be a fairly defiant figure and really questioned his credibility.
Well, Fran, do you think there was something the prosecution could have done to neutralize the accusations of the defense? Because essentially, the defense put George on trial, and guess what? It was successful. The jurors are now saying they regarded him as a very suspicious figure, and they even thought he may have been responsible for the killing. So this essentially opens the door to any defense team, if they've got a dream team and enough lawyers, of picking somebody out of a hat and saying this person is responsible, accusing them of all sorts of things that they offered zero proof for, like molestation, and getting away with it.
He's our villain, right?
Right. You know, I think from my perspective, the prosecution did question him. He did deny all of those allegations. But from my professional experience and all the years that I've worked with people who have been molested, and clearly some people survive molestation and go on and lead very productive lives when they do the right therapy, people deny. I mean, the molester usually denies, the victim usually denies. So I have to tell you that I don't know whether it was true or not. He did deny it on the stand, but I can say to you honestly, as a professional, when I see people as dysfunctional as Casey, there has usually been some sort of trauma in their lives. And I'm not saying that there was sexual abuse. I don't know. I don't think any of us truly will really know for sure. but I think that there are family secrets that really affected the way she behaved.
But I have to jump in here with the suspicious timing of the revelation of the molestation. Remember, she was running around saying the baby was kidnapped by Zenaida Gonzalez right up until we found the child dead. And then the story changed to an accidental drowning. And at that time is when we first heard of the molestation. Did she ever tell a counselor in her past? Did she ever tell anybody? No. You've got to question, I think, the timing of this revelation. Fran?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jane. I really do. And one of the things that Caylee does, and that she's so wonderful at, is lying. She lies about everything. And I've repeated this before, but with other clients that I've worked with that are like Caylee, when I say to them, how do I know when you're telling me the truth? And they say, well, I lie 50% of the time. So you can never know if somebody like her is telling the truth. And I agree that the timing was somewhat suspicious. You know, it's a great question. And again, I hate to say that I don't think that we will ever really know the answer. The only people that know the answers is that family.
Hey, Fran, let's take a quick break. We'll have a chance to chat with you about Caylee herself, your read on her, and what's she going to do moving forward.
And I've got to go out to the psychotherapist, Fran Sherman. I think that the jury got a completely different sense of George Anthony than the rest of us in the public who have been seeing him for 3 years, searching for his granddaughter, Caylee, wearing the shirt, where is Caylee, going on Larry King, going on all these national shows, trying to find his granddaughter at the time in the summer and fall of 2008. The jurors didn't know anything about that. All they saw, apparently, was this suspicious character who allegedly had an affair and who didn't respond in a rational manner after he smelled death in his daughter's car trunk. Your thoughts, Fran?
You know, again, I agree with you, Jane. I think they, again, did not see all the things that we saw for the months prior, the years prior, all of his grieving, and there were moments, I believe, when he was on the stand, when he was sobbing. And again, this man has lost everything in his life. He lost his granddaughter. He's contemplating losing his daughter. There are all sorts of allegations about his relationship or his infidelity with his wife. I think he's a very, very sad man, regardless of the suspicious things that Caylee might have said or the defense attorneys might have said about him. I do believe that he's sad, he's grieving, he's lost everything in his life. I mean, he lost his precious granddaughter. And again, they were contemplating losing their daughter. And I can't think of anything more incredibly awesome and heart-wrenching for a parent to lose everything.
But
so in that
Fran,
case, I absolutely believed him.
This is a guy who also considered suicide and who actually attempted suicide, and that didn't seem to move the jury at all either, which I find somewhat perplexing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that, you know, people have said all sorts of things. People have said, well, he did that just to be manipulative. I don't think anybody attempts suicide. I mean, sometimes people make suicidal gestures to be manipulative, but he had a letter. He had a plan. He had a real intent to commit suicide. So I believe that attempt was real. I think this was just a broken man. And again, his daughter was in jail. He lost his granddaughter, and he felt that the only way his family could move on is if he was deceased. And do I believe that he was clinically depressed? Absolutely.
You gotta wonder how he feels now. I spoke to Mark Lippman, who was the attorney for George and Cindy, and he told me that Cindy is distraught that her daughter, Caylee, the defendant who was acquitted of the serious charges, refused to see her here at the jail behind me after the verdict and sentencing. She was turned away by her mother. And you have to wonder how George feels knowing that, well, he might have gotten his daughter off the hook, but only at the expense of his own reputation being trashed in the world's eye. Quickly, Fran.
Yeah, yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's so many dynamics, and you know, a lot of people have said, well, the lawyers said that she should not talk to her mom, but I also think she's trying to punish her mom and punish her parents because maybe she didn't think that they were on her side. It's very complicated, and again, like you said, we will probably never know the truth.
Yep, in confusion, there can be reasonable doubt, and maybe that says it all. Back to you, Susan.
All right, Jane, thanks so much. As you know, again, Casey, a free woman on Sunday, will be checking in. Back with you and Mike out of Orlando.